Hi everyone, and thanks for tuning in to our video on how to solve a system of equations using, ta-da, your TI-84. So we've been working over the last several weeks on solving a system of equations by hand. We've been doing graphing, substitution, elimination, all by hand. And now I want to graduate you into the TI-84. This will not replace what we've done by hand, but it sure is a great check. So that's why I'm showing this to you. So my first question is, did you know, which you probably didn't, but did you know you can solve a system of equations on the TI-84 using graphing? So you can graph two lines and see where they intersect. And also you can do elimination. Now, no substitution. The substitution method is not something you can do on the TI-84. So that one we'll just leave totally by hand. But I will show you how to do graphing and elimination, and I have two examples for each. Okay, so let's get into it. Actually, before we get into it, because we're going to be graphing, I want to show you something that is very valuable for all of your studies on the TI-84. It's called your window. And if we talk about this now, I think it'll resolve a lot of questions that may come up along the way. So I want you to pretend that this outline, this big outline, is the calculator, right? This is the whole calculator. And then this part right here, which is the screen, is what I like to call the window, okay? And setting a good window is always a good idea when you're graphing. Now, if you want to think about sort of the default window, this is your go-to window when you're doing mostly everything. As we work through the calculator on different types of problems, there will be times we change the window to something other than the default. But for today, I'm going to teach you what the default is and how to make it so. Because your calculator may have been used by an older sibling, maybe you got it used on the internet. It might not be set to its factory settings, so we're going to default it today. So what is a window? Well, when you go into your window, there are basically 6 prompts you need to fill in. They want to know the X value you would like your minimum to be. Now let's talk about X minimum. So if you look here when you're graphing, we know this is the x-axis, right? Right here. Minimum means the lowest. So really we're talking about how far left. What's the lowest number, I mean in the negatives here, what's the lowest number you'd like to see on your screen on the x-axis? Now I like -10 for that. Because just if I'm drawing a graph by hand, I tend to do that naturally. You know, I might make my x-axis and say like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then my endpoint here will be 10. Maybe you only go to -5, but I like -10. So my default minimum x is going to be -10. Which makes the maximum x pretty easy. I like to make that +10 because I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. That gives me a nice view of my graph. Now, when they say X scale, they basically want to know, well, what are you traveling by? What are you incrementing each tick mark here by? And you can see I went by ones. So I like to set my default scale to 1. And now the same exact thing happens on the Y's. For my minimum Y, I like to go as low as -10, as high as +10, and I also like to go by ones. So if your window is ever looking troubled, if you always just default back to these, you're going to be good to go. So how do you do that? How do you actually default? Well, you grab your calculator, go ahead and turn it on. And you see this button right here that says window. Yep, go ahead and press it down. Now, if your calculator is brand new, right out of the box, yeah, this is probably already set. Before I started this video, I defaulted mine as well. So you're just going to type these numbers into these prompts. So you can see -10, 10, 1, -10, 10, 1. And now your window is set and ready to go for this lesson. Okay, now the next thing you want to do is you want to press Y equals. Whenever we're graphing anything, that's our go-to button. Now, you see I have some things in here. You may have some things in there too. If you do, we're just going to clear them off. So I'm going to hit clear here and arrow down, and I'm going to hit clear there. And now I've got a blank slate ready to go. The other thing I need you to pay attention to, especially if your calculator is used, you see these words up here, plot 1, plot 2, plot 3. If any of these are highlighted, I need you to turn them off. To do that, you're going to use your up arrow right here to come up to any of these, and you can kind of move around with your left and right arrows. If it is highlighted, you're going to let it blink over top and then press Enter to unhighlight it. Now, mine weren't on to begin with, so now you see I've actually got mine highlighted. I don't want that. So I'm going to arrow up, let it blink, hit Enter, and then come back down. And now all of mine are not highlighted. This is what you want it to look like. If they are highlighted, your graph is not going to allow you to do what you want it to do. Okay, so now we're ready for our first example. So with everybody here in this screen with a good default window, we're ready to roll. So let's say, let me bring my first example up here. Let's say you were solving a system, solve the system by graphing. Now, when I made you do this by hand, you took a graph, you plotted this graph, you plotted this graph. Wherever they crossed was your answer. Well, today you don't have to do this by hand. We're going to let the calculator do the work. So what I want you to do is grab your TI-84. Where should I put mine? I'll put mine here so you can see pretty good here. Okay, so you're in Y equals, right? Y equals, we've got that part. All we have to type over here is 2x minus 1. Okay, so you're going to type the number 2. That's easy. Now the X, do you see this button right here next to the green alpha key? It's got 4 letters on it, X, T, theta, and N. Well, in your calculator settings, this is defaulted if you press it to type an X, and that's what we want. So this is where you type for an X. Okay, and then minus. Now make sure for the minus, you're using this guy, not negative. The calculator is very finicky about that. When it's a negative, you use this guy. When it's minus, you use this guy. And they display 2 different sizes, so the minus actually looks bigger on the screen than the negative. So we want a minus and then 1. And we'll hit enter to store it. Now the second equation, they call that y sub 2, that's this guy. We're going to type negative. Now we do want the little one. Negative x right here plus 2. Enter. So now you've turned your 2 equations on. You can see the equals is highlighted. That's what we want. And now we want to take a look at the graph. So you're going to press graph right here, upper right corner, graph. And here they come. You don't have to graph them by hand. The calculator is graphing them for you. And then once you had, your graphs down, you always named for me the point where they intersected. So how do you get that point of intersection on the calculator? Well, number one, I don't want you to eyeball it. Don't try eyeballing it. There's actually a set of keys that you press that will get you that point exactly. So here they are. You ready? You're going to press, well, let me say this. You see this here in blue. It says calculate. It's above the trace button. We don't want to trace. We want to calculate this point of intersection. Because the calculate is written in blue, we're going to press the blue second button before we press trace. So I want you to press second trace. And this screen comes up, okay? And when we get to this screen, what do we want to calculate? Well, we want to calculate the place where the two lines intersect. So let's arrow down to number 5. You can also just press number 5, hit enter. Now, it doesn't just spit the answer right out. We have a few prompts we have to navigate first. So this says first curve question mark. Now, if you look, the cursor is blinking on the first line that was graphed. So it's sort of like when you do online shopping and you're at your confirmation screen, like, are you sure you want to buy this item? Are you sure it's the right color and the right size? This is like saying, is this your first graph? Is this the one you're talking about? And the answer to that is yes. So when it prompts you first curve, you literally just hit enter. So go ahead and hit enter. When you do that, the cursor jumps to the other line and says, hey, second curve, is this your second line, question mark? Yep, so hit enter. And finally, it says, hey, do you have a guess? Do you have a guess where these two lines intersect? Well, I'm guessing they intersect about right here. The cursor is currently over here. So if I use this right arrow, I can move that cursor closer to where I think they crisscross, which is about right there. And now I hit enter, and voila, it spits out the point of intersection as 1, 1. X is 1, Y is 1. So by the TI-84, the answer to this system of equations, where these two lines intersect, all you would have to put is 1, 1, final answer. Isn't that cool? Okay, let's do one more, graphing. Okay, example. Solve the system. Y equals 1/2 x minus 3 and y equals negative 3 over 2x plus 1. So again, we just grab our TI-84, set it on down here, scooch this over, and let's go back to y equals. I'm going to press y equals here. Now I want to get rid of this old junk, so all I have to do is for y1, I just hit clear, arrow down, y2, clear, and I'm ready to roll. Now, to type in this first equation, if your calculator, which most of them do, has the alpha y equals fraction capability, now would be a great time to hit alpha y equals, enter, and we're going to type in 1 over 2, kick out, here's my x, minus, make sure you're on the right, minus 3. Enter to store it. Now my next equation, negative 3 over 2, so I can type my negative first, negative, alpha y equals, enter, 3 over 2, kick out, x plus 1. If I'm going too fast for you, you can always hit pause. Okay, so we have that. Now we're going to hit graph. Let's take a look at these lines. There's my first one, positive 1/2 x minus 3, and there's my next one. Clearly, we have a point of intersection right here. And so now to find it, we have to go through those keystrokes again. Hopefully you're remembering we want to calculate. So we have to hit second trace. So second trace, come down. We're going to find where these two lines intersect. Enter. First curve, you betcha. There's my cursor. Hit enter. That's confirmation. Second curve. See it jump to the second curve? Yep. Enter. And now my guess. Well, my guess is that they intersect about right here. So I'm going to pull that cursor to the right and place it on the point of intersection right there and hit enter. And that should be that. So it looks like 2, negative 2. So that's my answer. 2, negative 2. Okay? And this is how you solve a system of equations by graphing on the TI-84. Now, our next video is going to show how to do elimination. So tune into our next video to figure out how you use the TI-84 to solve a system by elimination. Thanks for watching.